The Alpha King's hand was fire against Isla's throat. Not burning, never burning, but alive with a heat that spread through her veins like liquid starlight, rewriting every cell, every breath, every trembling beat of her wounded heart. The ceremonial hall had gone so silent that Isla could hear the chandeliers swaying overhead, crystal singing against crystal. She could hear her own pulse thundering in her ears. She could hear the collective inhale of 300 wolves who couldn't believe what they were witnessing. Alpha King Gerald Ashford, ruler of the Northern Territories, commander of 5 regions, the wolf so dominant that alphas bowed in his presence, had just marked an Omega. Not just any Omega, the weakest one in Silvercrest's pack. The one who'd been laughed out of her fated mate bond not 30 seconds ago. Mine, he said again, and the word resonated through the hall like a judge's gavel. Final. Absolute. Unquestionable. Isla's knees threatened to buckle, but Gerald's other hand moved to her waist, steadying her with a gentleness that contradicted the lethal power radiating from every inch of him. His storm-gray eyes held hers, and in their depths, she saw something that made her breath catch. Recognition. Not surprise, not curiosity, recognition, as if he'd been searching for her across lifetimes and had finally found what he'd been seeking. Your Majesty, Riker's voice cracked through the silence, stripped of its earlier confidence. Gerald's head turned slowly toward the beta, and Isla felt the shift in the room's energy like a physical blow. Wolves near Riker actually stepped back, their instincts screaming at them to flee from a predator whose attention they just attracted. You were saying? Gerald's voice was silk wrapped around steel. Something about rejection, I believe? Riker's face had gone from arrogant to ashen. He dropped to one knee, head bowed, the traditional posture of submission to an Alpha King. I didn't know, Your Majesty. I had no idea she was. That she was what? Gerald released Isla just long enough to take one step toward Riker, and that single step carried the weight of an avalanche. That she was worthy? That she was powerful? Or that she was mine? The possessive pronoun made Isla's wolf, that small, timid creature that had barely whimpered during her own rejection, suddenly surge forward with a confidence she'd never felt. Her wolf recognized this male, recognized his dominance, and instead of cowering, she preened. She wanted to be claimed by him. She wanted to submit to this strength because it wasn't cruelty masquerading as power. It was protection. It was choice. All of it, Your Majesty, Riker whispered. I apologize for my disrespect. You don't apologize to me. Gerald's words cut like a whip. You apologize to her. The mate the moon goddess gave you, whom you rejected in front of your entire pack with mockery and cruelty. You apologize to the woman whose bond you severed for the entertainment of fools, who don't understand the first thing about true strength. Isla felt 300 pairs of eyes swing back to her. But this time the weight was different. Before, she'd been a joke, a cautionary tale, a reminder of what happened when Omegas forgot their place. Now she was dangerous. Now she was claimed by the most powerful wolf in 5 regions. Now she was untouchable. Riker turned toward her, still on his knees, and the sight sent a thrill through Isla that she immediately felt guilty about. She shouldn't enjoy this. Shouldn't want to watch him grovel. But after years of being invisible, of being nothing god, it felt like breathing after a lifetime underwater. Isla Thorne, Riker said, and he couldn't quite meet her eyes. I apologize for my words. For my actions. For rejecting your fated mate in the most public, humiliating way possible? Gerald supplied helpfully. For trying to sever a bond blessed by the moon goddess herself? For teaching an entire generation of young wolves that cruelty and strength are the same thing. Each question landed like a physical blow. Riker's shoulders hunched further with every word. But Isla found her voice, small at first but growing stronger. I accept your apology. She paused, feeling Gerald's presence like a warm shield at her back. But I don't forgive you. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Gasps rippled through the crowd. An Omega didn't refuse forgiveness from a Beta. It wasn't done. It wasn't. Good, Gerald said, and Isla felt his approval like sunshine on her face. He turned back to the crowd, his voice carrying to every corner of the massive hall. Let me be abundantly clear about what just happened here. This woman is under my protection. My claim. My mark. Anyone who challenges her challenges me. Anyone who disrespects her disrespects their king. Anyone who harms her. His eyes swept across the sea of faces, and even from where she stood, Isla could see wolves trembling. We'll learn exactly why the northern territories have remained unconquered for 300 years. The threat hung in the air like smoke from a funeral pyre. Alpha Marcus Silvercrest, Riker's father and the host of this ceremony, finally found his voice. He was a large man, powerful in his own right, but next to Gerald he seemed diminished. Your Majesty, we are honored by your presence. If we had known you were coming, you would have what? Hidden your pack's cruelty better. Gerald's tone could have frozen fire. I came because I felt a disturbance in the bond lines. A rejection happening, forced and cruel. I came because the moon goddess herself woke me from sleep with a vision of this woman. He gestured to Isla. Being torn apart by wolves who should have protected her. Isla's mind reeled. The moon goddess had sent him a vision? Of her? That was impossible. Visions were reserved for matters of prophecy, of great importance, She's important, Gerald continued, as if reading her thoughts. More important than any of you understand. More important than I fully understand yet. But I know this. The moon goddess doesn't make mistakes. If she bound this woman to your beta, there was a reason. And if your beta was too blind, too arrogant, too poisoned by pack politics to see it, then he doesn't deserve her. He turned back to Isla, and his expression softened in a way that made her heart stutter. But I will. I do. Your Majesty, Isla whispered, because she had to say something, had to make sense of this impossible situation. You don't even know me. A smile ghosted across his lips, the first hint of warmth she'd seen from him. I know you stood in front of 300 hostile wolves and claimed your bond, even though you knew they'd mock you. I know you're trembling right now, but you haven't run. I know your wolf is small but fierce, and she's been beaten down so long she forgot how to fight back. He reached up, cupping her cheek with a gentleness that made her eyes burn. And I know that the moon goddess doesn't send me visions for nothing. So no, Isla Thorne, I don't know your favorite color or what makes you laugh. But I know everything that matters. Tears did fall then. Not from sadness but from something so overwhelming she didn't have words for it. Relief? Vindication? Hope, that stupid, relentless hope that maybe, just maybe, she'd been right to believe in the moon goddess's plan after all? I need to take her to my territory, Gerald said, addressing Alpha Marcus now. Tonight. She'll need medical attention. Bond rejection causes internal damage even if it's interrupted, and she'll need to be somewhere safe while she heals. Of course, Your Majesty, Marcus agreed quickly. Too quickly. Isla realized with a jolt that the Alpha was terrified. His son had just publicly humiliated the Alpha King's chosen mate. Wars had started over less. And Riker, Gerald added, almost as an afterthought, you'll report to my territory in 3 days. We need to discuss your future as beta, and whether someone with such poor judgment should hold a position of authority. Riker's face went white. Your Majesty, please. 3 days. Gerald's tone left no room for argument. Then he looked at Isla again, and his voice gentled. Can you walk, or should I carry you? The question was sincere, not mocking. Isla tested her legs, they were shaky but functional. I can walk. Then walk with me. He offered his arm like a gentleman from old stories, and Isla took it, feeling the solid strength of him beneath her fingers. As they moved toward the entrance, the crowd parted in absolute silence. But Isla felt their stares, heard their racing thoughts almost as clearly as words. The weak Omega, the one they'd ignored, dismissed, mocked. She was leaving with an Alpha King. Just before they reached the door, Isla heard a female voice, Mara, one of the she-wolves who'd laughed loudest during her rejection. It's not fair, Mara whispered to her friend. She's nobody. Why would the Alpha King? Gerald stopped, didn't turn around, but his voice carried back with perfect clarity. She's nobody? Your Omega can't lift training weights? She's weak. He did turn then, and his smile was all teeth. Let me tell you what I see. I see a woman who knew she'd be destroyed but spoke her truth anyway. I see a wolf who survived being invisible in her own pack, and still had the courage to reach for her bond. You want to know what's not fair? That you live in a pack that taught you to measure worth by physical strength alone. That you can't recognize true courage when it's standing right in front of you. He turned back to Isla. Come. Let's go home. Home. The word settled into Isla's chest like a promise. Chapter 2: Breaking Bonds and Building Bridges. The journey to the Northern Territory should have taken 3 hours by car. Gerald's driver, a stern-faced beta named Marcus who bore no relation to Silvercrest's Alpha, made it in too. Isla spent most of the ride in silence, pressed against the plush leather seat of what had to be the most expensive vehicle she'd ever been in, trying to process what had just happened. Her neck still tingled where Gerald had marked her. Not a true mate mark, she realized, because they weren't fated mates, but a mark of claim, of protection, of intention. In the wolf world, it meant almost the same thing. Gerald sat beside her, his presence overwhelming in the confined space. He'd removed his formal jacket, rolled up his sleeves, and somehow looked even more dangerous in casual clothing than he had in ceremony attire. But he hadn't touched her since they'd left, hadn't pushed or demanded or expected anything. He'd simply existed beside her, a wall of safety in wolf form. You have questions, he said finally, his voice low enough that the driver couldn't hear over the partition and the engine's purr. Isla did. About 1,000 of them. But the one that slipped out first surprised even her. Why did you really come tonight? His gray eyes found hers in the darkness of the car, illuminated only by passing streetlights. I told you. I had a vision. Alpha Kings don't rush to ceremonies because of visions about random omegas. Isla's voice was stronger now, away from the pack that had spent years teaching her to stay small and quiet. There's something you're not telling me. A slow smile spread across his face, not mocking like Riker's had been, but appreciative. You're smarter than they gave you credit for. That's not a high bar to clear. He laughed, a genuine sound that seemed to surprise him as much as it surprised her. No, I suppose it isn't. He was quiet for a moment, considering. The truth is, you're right. I don't usually respond to visions about pack ceremonies. But this one was different. The moon goddess didn't just show me your rejection. She showed me fire. Blood. Darkness spreading across all 5 territories. And at the center of it, barely visible, was a small wolf with your eyes. Isla's breath caught. A prophecy? Maybe. Or maybe a warning. The moon goddess speaks in riddles and symbols. But I've learned not to ignore her when she bothers to send messages. He reached over, carefully telegraphing his movement so she could pull away if she wanted. When she didn't, his hand covered hers. You're connected to something larger than either of us understands yet. And until I know what that is, I intend to keep you safe. By claiming me in front of my entire pack? By making sure every wolf in the Northern Territories knows that harming you means answering to me. His grip tightened slightly. That beta who rejected you. He made a mistake that could cost everyone dearly. If you're truly part of a prophecy, if the darkness I saw is coming, then you being weak and broken serves no one. Isla pulled her hand back, stung. So you're just trying to protect your territories. This isn't about me at all. That's not what I said. It's what you meant. Gerald was quiet for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, he sighed. You're not entirely wrong. When I first had the vision, my instinct was purely strategic: find the wolf, assess the threat, neutralize any danger. But then I actually saw you. His voice dropped lower, more intimate. You stood in front of 300 wolves and claimed a bond with the male who despised you. You knew what would happen, that he'd reject you, that they'd laugh, that you'd be destroyed. But you did it anyway because the moon goddess told you it was right. Do you understand how rare that kind of courage is? Isla wanted to argue, to dismiss it as foolishness rather than courage. But something in his tone stopped her. I've commanded armies, Gerald continued. I've seen warriors face death without flinching. But I've rarely seen someone face social annihilation, which for a wolf is often worse than death, with such dignity. So yes, strategically, I need to protect you because of whatever role you play in this prophecy. But personally, he met her eyes. I want to protect you because you deserve to be protected. Because maybe the moon goddess sent me that vision knowing I'd be the only one who could see your true worth. The words settled into Isla's chest, warm and dangerous and addictive. She wanted to believe them. But years of being dismissed, of being told she was worthless, of being invisible, those years had built walls that couldn't be torn down by pretty speeches alone. I need to know something, she said, proud when her voice didn't shake. This mark you gave me, does it mean we're mates? No. His answer was immediate and honest. Fated mates are chosen by the moon goddess. I can't override her will, even as an alpha king. This mark means you're under my protection, that you're part of my pack now, and that I'm willing to explore what might exist between us. But it doesn't make us mates. Then why? Because I needed to stop that rejection before it fully completed. Gerald's expression turned grave. Bond rejection is like tearing your soul in half. If Riker had finished his rejection before I intervened, the damage to you would have been catastrophic. You might have survived physically, but mentally, emotionally, spiritually, you would have been shattered. The mark interrupted the process, gave your wolf something else to focus on, someone else's strength to draw from. Isla's hand moved unconsciously to her neck, to the spot that still tingled with residual heat. So you saved me? I intervened. Whether that's the same as saving you remains to be seen. He looked out the window at the landscape rushing past. They'd left Silvercrest's urban territory behind and were now moving through dense forest. We're almost to my estate. When we arrive, you'll meet Dr. Sarah Chun. She's a wolf specialized in bond trauma. She'll examine you, make sure the rejection didn't cause lasting damage, and help you process what happened. A therapist? Among other things. She's also incredibly nosy, and will probably ask you 1,000 personal questions within 5 minutes of meeting you. His tone was affectionate. Fair warning. The car pulled off the main road onto a private drive that wound through towering pine trees. Even in darkness, Isla could sense the shift in territory. The air felt different here, charged with power that made her wolf sit up and take notice. This was Alpha King territory, sacred ground where only the most trusted wolves were allowed. And she was being brought here as if she belonged. The estate materialized out of the darkness like something from a dream. Not a mansion, though it was certainly large enough to qualify, but a sprawling complex of buildings that seemed to grow organically from the forest itself. Stone and wood and glass combined in ways that honored both wolf tradition and modern comfort. Lights glowed warm in windows, and Isla could see wolves moving about their business even at this late hour. Welcome to Ashford Estate, Gerald said as the car pulled up to the main building's entrance. Your new home, at least for now. The driver opened Isla's door, and she stepped out onto gravel that crunched under her borrowed heels. The night air was crisp, filled with pine and earth and something else, pack scent but different from Silvercrest's. Stronger, more unified, more like family than hierarchy. A woman appeared in the doorway. Asian features, early 40s, wearing jeans and a cable-knit sweater that suggested comfort over formality. Her eyes found Isla immediately, and her expression shifted from curious to concerned in a heartbeat. Oh, sweetheart, she said, moving down the steps with surprising speed. I can smell the bond trauma from here. Come on, let's get you inside and… Dr. Chun, Gerald interrupted gently. Maybe let her breathe for 30 seconds before the interrogation? I don't interrogate. I therapeutically inquire. But Sarah's smile was warm as she took Isla's arm. I'm Sarah. I'm here to help. And before you get all proud and claim you're fine, know that I can literally smell emotional distress, so lying won't work. Despite everything, Isla found herself smiling. Is everyone here this blunt? Only the people who matter, Sarah said, leading her toward the entrance. The rest of them are politicians. Gerald followed behind them, his presence a constant weight that Isla was beginning to find comforting? No, that was too strong a word. But not uncomfortable either. Something in between. The interior of the main building was as impressive as the exterior. High ceilings with exposed beams. A massive stone fireplace dominating one wall. Furniture that managed to be both elegant and inviting. Wolves nodded respectfully as Gerald passed, but Isla noticed something interesting. They didn't bow or scrape or show the fearful submission that Silvercrest wolves showed their alpha. This was respect born of genuine admiration, not terror. Sarah led them down a hallway to what appeared to be a medical suite, examination table, cabinets full of supplies, but also a comfortable couch and chairs that suggested this was as much therapy room as medical facility. All right, Sarah said, gesturing to the examination table. Let's see what we're working with. Gerald, you can wait outside. I'd prefer to stay, he said. And I'd prefer you wait outside. She doesn't need Alpha King energy hovering while I examine her. Sarah's tone brooked no argument. You can pace in the hallway like a nervous parent if you want, but you're not staying. To Isla's surprise, Gerald didn't argue. He simply looked at her. Is that all right with you? The fact that he asked made something warm bloom in Isla's chest. It's fine. He nodded once and left, closing the door softly behind him. Sarah immediately relaxed, her professional demeanor softening into something more approachable. He means well, but having an Alpha King in the room makes it hard for patients to be honest about pain. Too much instinct to appear strong. She patted the examination table. Up you get. And tell me everything, what happened, how you're feeling, don't leave anything out. So Isla did. She told Sarah about feeling the mate bond 3 months ago, about gathering her courage to speak at the ceremony, about Riker's cruel rejection and the crowd's laughter, about Gerald's sudden arrival and the mark that still tingled on her neck. She told her everything, and with each word, she felt something inside her begin to crack open. Not breaking but releasing. Like lancing a wound to let poison drain. Sarah listened without interrupting, her hands gentle as she examined Isla's neck, her eyes, checked her pulse and breathing and a dozen other things that Isla didn't fully understand. Finally, she sat back with a sigh. You're incredibly lucky, she said. The rejection was stopped about 80% through. Any longer and we'd be looking at serious psychological damage, PTSD, depression, possibly even a complete breakdown. As it is, you're going to feel the effects for weeks. Phantom pains where the bond was, emotional instability, probably nightmares. But you'll heal. The mark Gerald gave you is acting as an anchor, giving your wolf something to focus on besides the severed bond. So I'm okay? Physically, yes. Emotionally. Sarah's expression turned serious. That's going to take time and work. What happened to you was traumatic, Isla. You were publicly humiliated, rejected by your fated mate, and then claimed by an Alpha King you've never met. That's a lot for anyone to process, let alone a young Omega who's been systematically devalued by her pack for years. Isla looked down at her hands. They weren't wrong, though. I am weak. My wolf is small. I can't fight or... Stop. Sarah's voice was sharp enough to make Isla's head snap up. I'm going to tell you something that's going to piss you off, but you need to hear it. Your pack lied to you. They lied about what strength means, what worth means, what power means. And they did it so systematically, so completely, that you believed them. I'm not. You survived being invisible for years, and still had the courage to claim your mate bond. You stood in front of 300 hostile wolves without running. You walked out of that ceremony with an Alpha King and haven't had a single panic attack. Which, by the way, most wolves would have by now. Sarah leaned forward. Isla, physical strength is the easiest kind. Any wolf can learn to fight, to lift weights, to dominate through force. But emotional strength? Spiritual strength? The kind that lets you keep hope alive when everyone tells you you're worthless? That's rare. That's precious. And that's what Gerald saw in you tonight. Tears burned behind Isla's eyes again. I don't feel strong. No one who's truly strong ever does. That's how you know it's real. Sarah squeezed her hand. You're going to be okay. It won't be easy and there will be days you want to give up. But you're going to survive this. And eventually, maybe not soon, but eventually you're going to thrive. Chapter 3: Prophecy and Pack Politics. 3 days passed in a blur of unexpected comfort. Isla had been given a suite of rooms in the east wing of the estate. Bedroom, bathroom, sitting room, and a small balcony that overlooked the forest. The space was larger than her entire apartment had been in Silvercrest, decorated in soft grays and blues that felt calming without being cold. Sarah visited twice daily to check on her recovery, and each time Isla felt a little more of the phantom pain from the bond rejection fade. But what surprised her most was Gerald. He didn't push, didn't demand her presence or her time. Instead, he invited her to join him for meals, breakfast in the informal dining room, lunch often taken in his office while he worked and she read, dinner sometimes with his inner circle but usually just the two of them. He asked questions about her life, her interests, her dreams before Silvercrest had taught her to stop dreaming. He listened, actually listened in a way no one ever had before. And slowly, carefully, Isla began to understand why wolves followed him not from fear but from genuine loyalty. On the morning of the third day, the day Riker was due to arrive, Isla woke to find a dress laid out on her sitting room sofa. Not borrowed this time but clearly new, clearly tailored for her. Deep forest green, simple but elegant, with a note attached in Gerald's bold handwriting. For today, you should look like the woman you are, not the woman they told you to be. Isla held the dress against herself, studying her reflection in the mirror. She looked different than she had 3 days ago. Still small, still Omega, but something in her eyes had changed. Some spark that had been beaten down was beginning to flicker back to life. She dressed carefully, braided her hair, and made her way to Gerald's office where she knew he'd be preparing for Riker's arrival. The door was open, and she found him standing by the window, tension evident in every line of his body. "He's here," Gerald said without turning around. "Arrived 10 minutes ago with Alpha Marcus. I assume dear old dad came to run damage control." Isla's stomach clenched. "Do I have to be there when you speak with him?" Now Gerald did turn, his expression softening when he saw her. "Only if you want to be. This meeting is about consequences for his actions and his future as Beta. Your presence isn't required." He crossed the room to her, stopping close enough that she could feel his warmth. "But if you want to face him, to show him what they tried to destroy is still standing, I'd support that." Did she want to face Riker? 3 days ago the answer would have been absolutely not. But now, with Gerald's mark still warm on her neck and 3 days of Sarah's therapy helping her understand that his rejection said more about him than it did about her. "I want to be there," Isla said. "I want him to see that I'm okay. That he didn't break me." Pride flickered in Gerald's eyes. "Then you'll sit beside me during the meeting. As my marked wolf. As someone under my protection who has every right to be present when we discuss her abuser's punishment." The word abuser landed like a stone in water, ripples spreading outward. Because that's what Riker had been, wasn't it? What the whole pack had been. They'd systematically undermined her sense of worth, her confidence, her belief in herself. That was abuse even if there were no physical scars to show for it. "I'm ready," Isla said. The meeting was held in what Gerald called the formal receiving room, a space that managed to be both beautiful and intimidating, with its high-ceiling dark wood paneling, and the massive desk that served as a physical barrier between the Alpha King and whoever had been summoned to his presence. Gerald sat behind the desk and Isla took the chair to his right, a position of honor that wasn't lost on anyone. When Riker and Alpha Marcus were shown in, both men stopped short at the sight of her. Riker looked like he hadn't slept in days. His usual confidence had been replaced by barely concealed anxiety, and when his eyes found Isla, something painful flickered across his face. Regret? Fear? She couldn't tell and found, surprisingly, that she didn't much care. Alpha Marcus looked worse, older, diminished, wearing the expression of a man who knew his son had just destroyed their pack's political standing with one act of cruelty. "Your Majesty," Marcus said, bowing deeply, "thank you for granting us this audience." "I didn't grant you an audience. I summoned your son to answer for his actions." Gerald's tone could have frozen lava. "Your presence here is tolerated." It was a subtle but devastating insult. In the wolf hierarchy, being merely tolerated by an Alpha King was worse than being openly challenged. "Of course, Your Majesty." Marcus's jaw tightened, but he kept his tone respectful. "We've come to discuss Riker's mistake." "Mistake?" Gerald leaned back in his chair, the picture of casual power. "Is that what we're calling it? Because from where I stand, your son's mistake looks a lot like calculated cruelty designed to humiliate a young woman in front of her entire pack for daring to acknowledge a mate bond blessed by the moon goddess herself." Riker flinched. "Your Majesty, You weren't given permission to speak." The command in Gerald's voice made both men snap to attention. "You'll speak when I tell you to speak. Until then, you'll stand there and think about exactly what you destroyed 3 nights ago." Silence fell, heavy and oppressive. Isla sat perfectly still, her hands folded in her lap, watching Riker squirm under Gerald's cold gaze. Part of her, the part that had been humiliated and broken, wanted to feel satisfaction. But mostly she just felt sad. Sad that someone blessed with a fated mate bond had thrown it away because his pack valued the wrong things. After what felt like an eternity, Gerald spoke again. "Isla, would you like to say anything to your former mate?" Former mate. The words stung less than they should have. Isla stood, grateful when her legs were steady beneath her. She walked around the desk until she was standing directly in front of Riker, close enough to see the dark circles under his eyes, the tremor in his hands. "Look at me," she said softly. Riker raised his eyes, and the raw pain in them almost made Isla step back. "I want you to understand something," she continued. "What you did, the rejection, the humiliation, the cruelty, it hurt. It hurt so badly I thought I might not survive it. But you know what? I did. I'm standing here, stronger than I was 3 days ago, surrounded by wolves who see my worth. And you." She let her eyes sweep over him, taking in his disheveled appearance. "You look like you're falling apart." "I am," Riker whispered. "The bond. Even though I rejected it, I can still feel the echo of it. And it's killing me. Every time I close my eyes, I see you standing in that hall, looking at me like I was your entire world. And I destroyed it. I destroyed us." "You destroyed the chance at something beautiful," Isla corrected. "But you didn't destroy me. That's what you need to understand. I'm not weak because my wolf is small. I'm not worthless because I'm an Omega. And I'm not defined by your rejection." She turned back to Gerald. "I'm done." As she returned to her seat, she caught the flash of pride in Gerald's expression, the slight nod that said well done. "Now it's my turn," Gerald said, his attention returning to Riker. "You rejected your fated mate. In wolf law, that's your right, painful but legal. However, you did so in a way designed to cause maximum psychological harm. You mocked her, encouraged others to mock her, and tried to complete the rejection in front of 300 witnesses as a show of dominance. That crosses the line from exercising your rights into abuse. And I don't tolerate abuse in my territories." "Your Majesty," Marcus interjected desperately. "Surely there's some way to make amends." "Quiet." Gerald didn't even look at him. "I'm going to give you 2 choices, Riker Blackwood. The first. You can step down as Beta of Silvercrest Pack voluntarily, spend 1 year in my territories working with Dr. Chun to understand exactly why your actions were wrong, and then return to your pack in a lesser rank with the possibility of redemption. The second. I strip your Beta title by force, ban you from my territories entirely, and spread word to every pack in the Northern Territories about what you did. Which means no pack will accept you, no alpha will trust you, and you'll spend the rest of your life as a lone wolf." The silence that followed was deafening. "Those are my only options?" Riker's voice cracked. "To give up everything or become an outcast?" "Those are the merciful options," Gerald corrected coldly. "I could simply execute you for the harm you caused one of my marked wolves. That would be within my rights as Alpha King. Consider these choices a gift." Riker's face had gone white. I choose the first option. I'll step down. I'll work with Dr. Chun. I'll do whatever it takes to make this right." "You can't make this right," Gerald said flatly. "But you can become a better wolf than the one who stood in that ceremony hall. Whether you actually do so remains to be seen." He turned to Marcus. "As for Silvercrest Pack, you'll need a new Beta. I suggest you choose more carefully this time. Someone who understands that true strength includes compassion, that power without wisdom is tyranny, and that the moon goddess's blessings aren't to be treated as jokes." Marcus bowed. "Yes, Your Majesty. It will be done." "Good. You're both dismissed. Riker, you'll return here in 1 week to begin your rehabilitation. Do not be late." The 2 men left, Marcus practically dragging his son from the room. When the door closed behind them, Gerald let out a long breath and some of the terrible tension left his shoulders. "That was harder than I expected," he admitted. "Why?" Isla asked. "You were terrifying. Because part of me wanted to do worse. Wanted to make him hurt the way he made you hurt." Gerald's gray eyes found hers. "But I'm not supposed to rule based on emotion. I'm supposed to rule based on justice. Sometimes those things align. Sometimes they don't." Isla stood and moved closer, surprising herself with her boldness. "Thank you. For giving him a chance to be better. Even after what he did. Thank Sarah when you see her next. She's the one who suggested rehabilitation over punishment." Gerald's hand came up, fingers ghosting along her jaw in a touch so gentle it made her breath catch. "You did well today. Facing him took courage. I had a good example to follow, Isla said softly. Something shifted in the air between them, something warm and electric and dangerous in all the best ways. Gerald leaned slightly closer, his eyes searching hers for permission, for interest, for... A sharp knock on the door made them both step back. Your Majesty, a voice called through the wood. Urgent message from the eastern border. We have a situation. Gerald's expression immediately shuddered, the vulnerable moment vanishing beneath layers of Alpha King authority. Come. A young warrior entered. Couldn't be more than 20, with a kind of nervous energy that suggested whatever news he carried was bad. Scouts report rogue movements along the Blackwood territory border. Not just a few rogues, dozens. Maybe more. They're organized, Your Majesty. Moving with purpose. Isla felt Gerald go absolutely still beside her. Organized rogues? Yes, sir. They appear to be led by someone, though we haven't identified who yet. They're heading north, straight toward the heart of your territories. Gerald's eyes flickered to Isla for just a moment, and she saw it, the flash of recognition, of fear. The vision he'd told her about. Fire. Blood. Darkness spreading across the territories. It was beginning. Chapter 4. When darkness gathers. Gerald's war room was exactly what Isla would have expected. Maps covering every surface, markers indicating packed territories, borders, and strategic positions throughout the northern territories. Within minutes of the scouts' report, the room had filled with Gerald's inner circle. His head warrior Matthias, a grizzled beta with scars that told stories of 100 battles. His intelligence coordinator Vera, a sharp-eyed woman who seemed to catalog every detail. And Sarah, because as Gerald explained, if this is what I think it is, we'll need medical and psychological expertise, not just military. Isla stood in the corner trying to stay out of the way. Gerald had told her she could leave, that this wasn't her responsibility, but something kept her rooted in place. The vision. The prophecy. The small wolf with her eyes at the center of darkness. Talk to me about organized rogues, Gerald said, leaning over the largest map. How is that even possible? It shouldn't be, Matthias replied, his gruff voice carrying years of experience. Rogues by definition reject pack structure. They're lone wolves, unstable, violent. They don't cooperate. They don't organize. They barely tolerate each other's presence. And yet we have dozens moving together with clear purpose and coordination. Vera tapped a marker on the map. They crossed here into Blackwood territory 2 days ago. Reports say they're armed, not just claws and teeth but actual weapons. Silver blades, wolfsbane darts. Someone's funding them. Someone's training them. To what end? Sarah asked. Rogues don't want territory. They want isolation. Why would they organize an invasion? Gerald's eyes found Isla across the room. Because someone convinced them they could have something better than isolation. Someone offered them a purpose. You think this is related to your vision, Matthias said, not a question, a statement. I think the moon goddess doesn't send warnings for nothing. Gerald straightened. Matthias, I need scouting parties doubled. I want to know exactly how many rogues we're dealing with, who's leading them, and what their target is. Vera, reach out to your contacts. Find out if any other territories are seeing similar movements. And get me everything you can on recent rogue activity. Patterns, locations, anything unusual. Both nodded and left immediately to carry out their orders. Sarah moved closer to Isla. How are you holding up? I'm fine, Isla said automatically, then caught Sarah's knowing look. Okay, I'm terrified. Gerald thinks I'm somehow connected to all this, doesn't he? He thinks you're important to understanding it, Sarah corrected gently. That's different from being responsible for it. Is it? Isla wrapped her arms around herself. What if this is happening because of me? Because I survived the rejection? Because Gerald marked me? Then it would have happened anyway with different variables. Gerald's voice cut through her spiral of anxiety. He'd crossed the room without her noticing, and now he stood close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from him. Listen to me, Isla. Whatever's coming, and something is definitely coming, it's not because of you. You're not the cause of darkness. You're the light that helps us fight it. How can you know that? Because the moon goddess showed me a wolf with your eyes at the center of the prophecy, yes. But that wolf wasn't causing the darkness. She was standing against it. Small, seemingly powerless but refusing to back down. His hand came up to cup her cheek. Sound familiar? Despite her fear, Isla managed a small smile. That's a generous interpretation. It's an accurate one. He glanced back at the maps, his expression troubled. I need to go to the border. See the situation firsthand, speak with the scouts, assess the threat level. I'm coming with you. Absolutely not. Gerald. It's too dangerous. These are rogues, unpredictable, violent, specifically armed to kill wolves. I'm not bringing you into that situation. His tone left no room for argument. Isla felt her own wolf stir, that small, timid creature that had spent years being beaten down. But now, with Gerald's mark on her neck and 3 days of Sarah's therapy helping her understand her own worth, her wolf was finding her voice again. And that voice was saying no. With respect, Your Majesty, Isla said, using his title deliberately, you don't get to decide where I go or what risks I take. I'm under your protection, yes. I carry your mark. But I'm not your prisoner. And I'm not a child who needs to be locked away for her own good. Sarah made a sound that was definitely an amused snort, quickly disguised as a cough. Gerald's eyes narrowed. I'm trying to keep you safe. I know. And I appreciate it. But if I'm truly connected to this prophecy, if my presence somehow matters to what's coming, then hiding me away helps no one. Isla stepped closer, meeting his gaze without flinching. You told me I was brave for standing in front of my pack and claiming my truth. Don't punish me for that bravery by treating me like I'm too fragile to handle reality. A long moment of silence followed. Isla could practically see Gerald weighing his options, his instinct to protect warring with his respect for her autonomy. Finally, he sighed. You stay with me at all times. You don't leave my side. If I tell you to run, you run without question. Agreed. Agreed. And you wear protective gear. Kevlar vest, silver-resistant clothing, the works. Fine. And you absolutely, under no circumstances, try to be a hero. Isla smiled slightly. I'm an Omega who can barely lift training weights. I wasn't planning on challenging any rogues to combat. Good. He turned to Sarah. Make sure she's properly equipped. And Sarah? If anything happens to her, I'm holding you personally responsible. Understood, Sarah said, though her eyes were sparkling with what looked suspiciously like pride as she looked at Isla. Come on, let's get you ready to face down organized rogues and probably certain doom. Just another Tuesday in the Northern Territories. 2 hours later, Isla found herself in the back of a military-grade vehicle heading toward the eastern border. She wore body armor that made her feel like a tactical turtle, carried a silver-resistant knife that Sarah had insisted she take, just in case, though for the love of the moon goddess, don't actually try to fight anything, and sat beside Gerald as the forest blurred past. The scouting camp at the border was a temporary setup. Canvas tents, defensive positions, wolves in both skin and fur patrolling the perimeter. Matthias met them as they arrived, his expression grim. We've confirmed at least 40 rogues in the immediate area, possibly more hanging back. They're not attacking, just watching, waiting. It's unnerving as hell. He led them to a ridge overlooking a valley. They're down there. Isla followed his pointing finger and felt her blood run cold. The valley below was filled with wolves, dozens of them like Matthias had said. But what made her stomach drop wasn't the number. It was their formation. They weren't scattered randomly the way rogues should be. They were organized into clear groups posted at strategic positions, moving with military precision. That's not possible, Gerald muttered. Rogues don't have the mental stability for formation work, Matthias finished. I know, but there they are, clear as day. Someone's got them on a short leash. I need to see their leader, Gerald said. Set up a parley. Tell them the Alpha King requests an audience to discuss their presence in his territories. Your Majesty, that's an order, Matthias. The grizzled beta nodded reluctantly and moved off to carry out the command. Gerald turned to Isla. Stay here. Stay with the guards. I mean it. I will, Isla promised, because she wasn't stupid enough to walk into a rogue camp. But as Gerald prepared to descend into the valley under parley terms, meaning both sides agreed not to attack during negotiations, Isla felt something strange. A pull, similar to but different from the mate bond she'd felt toward Riker. This was less personal, more universal. Like the moon goddess herself was tugging at her consciousness, trying to tell her something important. She watched Gerald move down the slope, flanked by 4 of his best warriors. Watched as a figure emerged from the rogue camp to meet him. A tall male with silver-shot black hair and eyes that even from a distance looked wrong. Too cold. Too empty. They spoke, too far away for even Wolf hearing to catch clearly. But Isla saw Gerald stiffen, saw his warriors tense. Saw the rogue leader smile. Not the warm kind, but the smile of a predator who's just trapped its prey. And then she saw them. Coming from the forest behind the ridge where she stood. More rogues, at least a dozen, moving silently through the trees toward the camp. Toward her. Ambush! Isla screamed, her voice carrying across the valley. Gerald, it's an ambush. Everything happened at once. The rogues behind her attacked the camp guards. Gerald and his warriors turned to charge back up the slope. The rogue camp below exploded into motion, wolves pouring forward to cut off their retreat. Isla found herself grabbed by rough hands, a blade pressed to her throat. "Don't move, little Omega," a voice growled in her ear. "You're coming with us." Through the chaos, she saw Gerald fighting his way toward her. Saw the desperation in his eyes as more rogues swarmed between them. Saw him take a silver blade to the shoulder and keep fighting anyway, because she was in danger and nothing, absolutely nothing, would stop him from reaching her. "Gerald!" she screamed. His eyes locked on hers across the battlefield. "Run!" But she couldn't run. The knife at her throat prevented that. All she could do was watch as the Alpha King fought like a demon to reach her, taking wound after wound but never stopping, never surrendering. And then strange, impossible, completely unexpected. Isla felt power surge through her. Not physical strength. Something else. Something that made her eyes glow with silver light, made her wolf, that small timid creature, suddenly roar with a voice that shook the very air. The rogue holding her screamed and fell back, smoke rising from where his hands had touched her skin. Every rogue in the immediate area staggered, their eyes rolling back as if struck by an invisible force. And in the sudden silence that followed, Isla heard a voice. Ancient, powerful, unmistakably divine. "You are mine, daughter. You always have been. And it is time you understood why." The moon goddess had spoken. Chapter 5. Silver Light and Dark Truths. Isla collapsed. Not from pain or fear, but from the sheer overwhelming power that had just moved through her like lightning through a rod. Her vision swam with silver light, her ears filled with a sound like celestial chimes, and for a moment, just one eternal impossible moment, she understood everything. The prophecy, the darkness, her role in it all. Then the moment passed and she was just Isla again, small and shaking on the forest floor. "Isla!" Gerald's voice cut through the ringing in her ears. He dropped to his knees beside her, his hands gentle despite the blood streaming from multiple wounds. "Talk to me. Tell me you're okay." I don't know what I am." Isla sat up slowly, her whole body trembling. Around them the battle had stopped. Not because it was finished, but because everyone, pack wolves and rogues alike, stood frozen, staring at her with expressions ranging from awe to terror. The rogue who'd held a knife to her throat lay several feet away, unconscious, his hands blistered and smoking. "What did you do?" Matthias asked, limping over with a nasty gash across his ribs. "I don't know." Isla looked at her hands. They seemed normal, no silver glow, no visible power. But she could feel it now, humming beneath her skin like electricity through power lines. Something dormant had just woken up, and it terrified her. I heard her. The moon goddess. She spoke to me." Gerald's expression shifted from concern to something more complex. "What did she say?" "That I'm hers. That I always have been. And that it's time I understood why." Isla met his eyes. "Gerald, what am I?" Before he could answer, the rogue leader from the parley appeared at the edge of the clearing. He'd kept his distance during the fighting, but now he moved closer, his two cold eyes fixed on Isla with an intensity that made her skin crawl. "So it's true," he said, his voice carrying across the sudden silence. "The silver wolf has finally awakened." "Stay back," Gerald warned, positioning himself between Isla and the rogue. This parley is over. You attacked under truce terms. That's an act of war. War was always inevitable, Alpha King. The rogue leader smiled that predator's smile again. You just didn't know it yet. We're here because she sent us. The dark goddess, the shadow sister who was cast out eons ago for refusing to bow to her sister's light. She's returning, and when she does, every pack, every territory, every precious hierarchy you've built will crumble to dust. There is no dark goddess, Gerald said flatly. Only the moon goddess who guides all wolves. That's what they want you to believe. That's what the packs teach their pups, generation after generation. One goddess, one truth, one way. But it's a lie. The rogue gestured to his followers. We were cast out, made rogues not because we were unstable, but because we remembered the old ways. Because we refused to forget that there were once two sisters, one of light, one of shadow. And the shadow sister is coming back to reclaim what was stolen from her. Isla felt something twist in her gut. What does this have to do with me? Everything, Silver Wolf. You're the moon goddess's champion, her chosen vessel, the one who carries her light in physical form. Every few centuries, she chooses a wolf to embody her power on Earth. Usually during times of great darkness, when her direct intervention is needed. You're the latest in a long line of champions dating back to the first wolves. The words settled over Isla like a suffocating blanket. That's impossible. I'm nobody. I'm an Omega who can barely fight, lift weights, defend yourself. The rogue leader's smile turned mocking. Physical strength is the least important kind, little wolf. The moon goddess doesn't choose champions based on how well they can throw a punch. She chooses them based on the strength of their spirit, their faith, their ability to remain light, even when surrounded by darkness. His eyes swept over her. Tell me, how many years did you endure being called worthless? How many times did you face humiliation and still wake up the next morning with hope? That's the strength she values. That's why you were chosen. This is insane, Gerald said, though his voice lacked its usual conviction. Isla isn't. Isla is exactly what I said she is. You felt it, didn't you, Alpha King? That's why you had the vision. Why you came to her rescue. The moon goddess knew her champion would need protection while her power awakened. So she sent you. A worthy guardian for a worthy champion. Gerald's hand found Isla's, his grip tight and grounding. Even if what you're saying is true, and I'm not conceding that it is, what does the dark goddess want with her? To kill her, of course. Or corrupt her. Turn the moon goddess's own champion into a weapon of darkness. Either way, it removes the greatest threat to the dark goddess's return. The rogue leader's expression turned serious. The war is coming, Alpha King. Not in years or months. In days. Maybe hours. The dark goddess is gathering her forces. Rogues, yes, but also pack wolves who've grown disillusioned with the current order. Wolves who want power without responsibility, strength without compassion. She offers them everything they desire, and all they have to do is turn their backs on the light. Then we'll fight, Gerald said simply. Every pack in the Northern Territories will stand against this threat. Will they? When the dark goddess offers them power beyond imagining. When she shows them that the moon goddess's rules, protect the weak, value compassion, maintain hierarchy with wisdom, are chains holding them back. The rogue leader shook his head. Many will fall. Many already have. We didn't organize 40 rogues by chance. We organized 400. And they're just the beginning. The number hit like a physical blow. 400 organized rogues, armed and trained, moving with purpose. And that was just what they knew about. Isla stood on shaking legs, Gerald's hand still gripping hers. If I'm really this champion you claim, if I really carry the moon goddess's power, then tell me how to use it. How to fight the darkness. That, the rogue leader said, is between you and your goddess. We're just the messengers, the harbingers of what's coming. But I'll give you one piece of advice, Silver Wolf. Your power isn't in fighting. It's in unity. The moon goddess's strength comes from pack bonds, from wolves standing together. The dark goddess thrives on isolation, on turning wolf against wolf. If you want to survive what's coming, you need to unite the territories like they've never been united before. He turned to leave, his rogues falling into formation behind him. We'll meet again soon. On the battlefield, most likely. And when we do, I hope you figured out how to use that light inside you. Because the darkness won't show you mercy. They melted back into the forest, disappearing as silently as they'd come, leaving behind wounded wolves, burning questions, and the taste of war on the wind. Gerald immediately started issuing orders. Get the wounded to medical, secure the perimeter, send runners to all allied packs with warnings. But Isla barely heard him. She was too busy trying to process what she just learned. Champion of the moon goddess. Vessel of divine light. Prophesied warrior in a war between sister goddesses. She was still Isla Thorn. Still the small Omega who couldn't lift training weights. Still the girl who'd been rejected 3 days ago in front of her entire pack. How was she supposed to save anyone, let alone entire territories? Isla. Sarah appeared, medical bag in hand, her expression worried. Let me check you over. That power surge could have internal effects. I'm fine, Isla said automatically. Then at Sarah's knowing look. Okay, I'm not fine. But physically I'm undamaged. Emotionally and psychologically? That's another story. Fair enough. Sarah began examining her anyway, professional thoroughness overriding Isla's protests. For what it's worth, I've never seen anything like what you just did. I've read about historical champions in old texts, warriors who carried divine blessing, but I thought they were legends. Myths to inspire pups. Apparently not. Isla watched Gerald coordinating the evacuation, his wounded shoulder already being tended by a field medic. Even injured, even facing impossible odds, he moved with absolute confidence. With leadership. Sarah, how am I supposed to do this? I don't know how to be a champion. I don't know how to unite territories or fight a war or be anything other than what you've always been. Sarah interrupted gently. Isla, you've been fighting your whole life. Fighting to be seen, to be valued, to maintain hope when everyone told you to give up. This isn't different. It's just bigger. This is completely different. People are going to die. Territories are going to burn. And somehow I'm supposed to stop it. Not alone. Gerald's voice came from behind her. He'd finished his orders and now stood close enough that she could feel his warmth. If you're truly the moon goddess's champion, and after what I just saw I believe you are, then my role is clear. I'm your guardian. Your protector. Your support. You don't face this darkness alone, Isla. You face it with me, with Sarah, with Matthias, with every wolf who chooses light over shadow. Isla turned to look at him. His shoulder was bandaged, blood still staining his shirt, exhaustion evident in every line of his face. But his eyes, those storm-gray eyes, burned with absolute conviction. Why? She whispered. You barely know me. Why would you risk everything for someone like me? Because the moon goddess sent me a vision of you standing against darkness. Because you faced your entire pack and claimed your truth even knowing they'd destroy you. Because in 3 days you've shown more courage than most wolves show in a lifetime. He cupped her face with both hands, forcing her to meet his gaze. And because when I marked you it wasn't just strategy or protection. It was recognition. My wolf knew you were important before my mind understood why. Something warm and powerful and terrifying bloomed in Isla's chest. Not the mate bond. That was still severed, still a phantom ache. But something new. Something chosen rather than fated. I don't know how to be what they need me to be, she admitted. Then we'll figure it out together. Gerald's thumb brushed across her cheekbone. But first we get you back to the estate. We heal. We plan. And then we start building the unity that Rogue Leader said was your power. How? By calling a summit. Every pack in the Northern Territories, every Alpha, every Beta and Gamma. We tell them what's coming. We show them you, the champion, the light, the proof that the moon goddess is still watching over us. And we ask them to stand together against the darkness. And if they refuse? Gerald's smile was all teeth. Then they'll learn exactly why I'm called the Alpha King. One way or another, Isla, we're going to unite these territories. Because the alternative, shadow consuming light, chaos replacing order, the dark goddess victorious, isn't acceptable. Not while I'm still breathing. Isla looked around at the wounded wolves, at the burn marks on the ground where her power had manifested, at the forest where an army of rogues waited in the shadows. Everything had changed in 3 days. Everything had changed in 3 minutes. She'd gone from invisible Omega to prophesied champion, from rejected mate to What, exactly? Protected wolf? Chosen one? Reluctant savior? But as she stood there, Gerald's hands still cradling her face, Sarah's steady presence at her side, and the first stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky, Isla felt something shift inside her. The fear was still there, huge and overwhelming and paralyzing, but underneath it, growing stronger by the moment, was something else. Determination. She'd survived being invisible. She'd survived rejection. She'd survived having her entire worldview shattered and rebuilt in less than a week. If she could survive all that, then maybe, just maybe, she could survive this too. Okay, she said finally. Call the summit. Gather the packs. Tell them the champion has awakened and war is coming. She met Gerald's eyes, saw the pride and relief and something warmer that made her breath catch. Let's see if we can convince them to choose light over darkness. That's my girl, Gerald murmured, and the possessive phrase should have bothered her but instead sent warmth flooding through her veins. They returned to the vehicles, leaving scouts to monitor the rogue army's movements. As they drove back toward the estate, Isla watched the moon rise, full and bright and beautiful. Somewhere out there the moon goddess watched. Somewhere out there darkness gathered. But here now in this moment Isla Thorne, former invisible Omega, rejected mate, newly awakened champion, made a choice. She wouldn't hide. Wouldn't run. Wouldn't let fear control her decisions. She would stand. She would fight. And she would prove that the moon goddess's choice of champion, however unlikely, however imperfect, was exactly right. The beta had laughed while rejecting her. The pack had mocked her truth. The darkness had tried to claim her. But Isla Thorne was still standing, still fighting, still choosing hope over despair, light over shadow, faith over doubt. And when the war came, because it was coming as inevitable as moonrise, she would be ready. Not because she was strong in the ways wolves traditionally measured strength, but because she'd learned something her pack never understood. True power isn't about dominating others. It's about refusing to be broken, refusing to surrender your light, refusing to let darkness have the final word. The moon goddess had chosen her champion, and Isla Thorne was going to make damn sure she'd chosen well. To be continued in the Alpha King's Champion. War of Light and Shadow. The end. If this story resonated with you, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from, because tomorrow I will be giving you another story just as crazy as this one. And you don't want to miss it.